everyone, Jess here from the Scrappy Sisters. So I have purchased that cute little teal clock from the reject shop for $5. I've got the Pebbles Delightful. Then I've got these sets of thickers, one are foam and one are not. The Willow Lane puffy stickers, the Willow Lane chipboard. So I'm just showing you all the different supplies I've got organised here. The Pebbles foam thickers from Girl Squad, some Mod Podge and some really thin black glitter. So these are all the supplies I've organised for my little clock makeover I'm going to do here. So I'm taking the clock out of its packaging, of course, got to do that. And using the screwdriver, sorry, words would be good right now, I am taking the back off the clock because I'm going to give the clock face a little bit of a makeover. Katie has got a new craft room. She's been in it for a little while now, but not ages, and so I decided she needs a little bit of something to go up and around in her space to make it feel a bit more crafty. She has lots of things already, but you know, can't hurt to have a clock. So I decide I want to glitter the whole entire face. So I pour in my Mod Podge, and then I unfortunately realised that my Mod Podge has gone a little bit dodgy because I have had it for a very long time, and there's some very large chunks and some skins have appeared. So I carefully try and pull the little skins out because I don't want the lumps on my clock face, which is a bit of a disaster. But anyway, I do manage that. And then I'm just not having a good run. So once I pull out most of the skins, I then pour in some glitter. And oh, that was just a little bit of glitter, Jess. Slightly more than I was planning. The concept is the same. I was planning to pour in the glitter and mix it up and have sort of glitter paint to paint on my clock face, but it was slightly more than I was going for. I also am using a really dodgy brush because I wasn't sure how well this would clean up. Turns out it cleans out amazingly, perfectly fine, and that the dodgy brush was an awful idea because it doesn't paint on smooth at all. I mean, it's hard to get things smooth with glitter paint and glue, but a dodgy brush does not help. So I paint the entire clock face with this PVA glue concoction that I've got going on here. I'm trying to put it on relatively thick. I don't want to be able to see through to the white surface underneath. I am aware that it'll probably need 2 coats, which that's fine, but I still want to make sure it's going on relatively thickly right from the start. So when that's finished, as I said, I'm aware that I'll probably need 2 coats. So I actually just leave the PVA glue mix in this bowl, but seal it in Glad wrap and make sure it's really airtight because I don't want to have it end up drying in the bowl. And just cleaning up the edges a little bit there with an old needle pin. And so I've come back a couple of hours later. It's not 100% dry, but it almost is. And you can see 2 things. One, that you can still see a little bit through to the white. And 2, just how rough that's gone on. It is not a nice smooth surface at all. So because the paintbrush cleaned up so well, I end up getting a really old sponge. It was actually part of a roller that my son, pulled apart. But I kept all the bits and pieces for. So I'm just using the sponge, and by doing it with the sponge, I'm hoping it's going to fill in some of those rough gaps. So the paint won't be as smooth, as evenly distributed, but in the end it will be because it'll be thicker in the parts where there's sort of holes and thinner in the parts where there's lumps and bumps. And so I'm hoping I'm getting it a bit more of a smooth coverage and a smoother surface to work on, just so it'll have a nicer looking finish to it when it is done. So yes, I'm applying all of that, being careful to move the hands. I don't want to get the glue onto the hands of the clock because I don't want them sticking together, and just getting all of that done. So I have left that dry overnight, and so it is really thoroughly dry now, and you can see it's not a huge sparkle, but it's pretty good. And you can see it's not a perfectly smooth surface, but I've fixed it up sort of as well as I can. Now I really want to use this word create, but obviously it's black. So I've just got out one of those gold ink pens, and I'm just thickly colouring that gold ink right across the top of the create. I'm not bothering to do down the sides. You can, and that would look really cool, but I'm lazy. And so I'm just colouring in along the tops of the letters, and just giving it this gold finish. So the plan is that you'll be able to see the word create much better when it's sitting on the black glitter surface of the clock. So once I finish doing that, I still decide it's not gold enough, or it's not sort of sparkly or shiny enough. So I pull out my beautiful Wink of Stella gold pen. As you can already see, it's sitting there beside me. I'd sort of already pre-planned that. And just put that on top as well. And so that not only gives it a bit of a sparkle, but it just adds to the goldness of it, because it's got quite a decent amount of gold liquid in the Wink of Stella pens as well. And so that just really sort of finishes up that thicker, gives it a whole new life and a whole new look. And you can see that better sitting against the clock surface. Now, I didn't know if this was going to work, so you can see the hashtag that's above that word create. I use that as my little testing piece. I didn't want to ruin the word create, because I knew I was going to try and work it out somehow, even if I had to get paint or embossing or something like that. So I just did a test run with that hashtag first of all. So if you can do a test run, I do recommend doing that. So then I decided to, with these little these little letter stickers, I decided to do the same thing. Even though you would have been able to see the gold, the white, I decided to make those gold as well. So time to create is going to be sort of the title that goes on top of my clock. So now onto the numbers. So I had planned to use these white thicker numbers for the numbers. That sounds silly, because I knew none of the collections I had enough of the number 1. I don't think there'd be any full packs of thickers that had enough number 1s. You'd probably need a double pack, and I don't have any double packs of thickers, and especially not in white. But when I put that first number 1 on, I decided it was too big anyway, and I didn't want the size of those. So I went back to the same original thickers that I was using for time 2, and I'm going to use those. But now I have to have a bit of a play, because these ones aren't foam. Cutting those down to create number 1s isn't as easy. It doesn't look as seamless as what you do when you use the foam. But I realised that cutting the little sticks off the end of the Z or the Z is very close to creating a little number 1, and if I just cut the little legs off the normal number 1, they should look quite similar. So I'm pretty happy with that and how they look. You can't tell that it's a Z. It looks pretty straight. So I'm going to roll with that. So I went and got some tweezers. They're not the most ideal tweezers for this. Like the long nosed tweezers would be better. But it's better than trying to get my big fingers in there. And of course, just as you would with a normal clock design, I'm just starting with the 12, 3, 6 and 9. And I most certainly could have stopped there. I don't have to have all of the numbers, but I quite like the look of having all the numbers on the clock. So I'm just using the ruler to measure across the clock there to make sure, totally don't know what I was doing there. Don't worry, I'll fix that in a minute. To measure, there I go, realizing that I was just measuring the wrong diagonal, just to see that they're sort of close to being in the right spot. Poor Katie, if she's going to try and tell the time to the exact minute on this clock, it's probably going to be out. But I think it'll be close enough to tell the time to a guesstimate, if it says that it's 3 o'clock, it'll be 3 o'clock. I'm very confident that I have the 12, 3, 6 and 9 lined up correctly, but I'm not super confident that the 1 and 2 and the 4 and 5 and the 7 and 8 and the 10 and 11 are exactly in the right spot, but close enough. So I'm just adding some glue to these letters using the Tombow aqua glue. Obviously, I just want to make sure they really stick, but B, sticking onto the glitter surface was never going to be ideal. So just adding a little bit of adhesive just to give that a help along. I won't make you watch gluing down all the numbers. It's pretty self-explanatory, but just that's what I'm up to. So once I finish gluing down all the numbers, I then start thinking about my embellishing. Now I know that I want time to create as my title, and I really like the idea of it going down the left-hand side. So I'm thinking that it's going to stay there, but I just need to think about how I want to use those Pebbles supplies to embellish. So I'm pulling out the Pebbles ephemera and I'm pulling out the chipboard. I really want to use one of those chipboard clocks. I just think it's super cute. It's in the correct colouring to go with the outside of my clock. And I also just think in my general Scrappy life, it's going to be a little bit difficult to use it. So I really want to get it on the page somehow. So the clock. So I'm flicking through the Pebbles supplies, and obviously this is called Tea Lightful, and so there's a lot to do with cups of tea and tea bags and having tea together and things like that. And as much as Katie's really into that, I still want it to sort of match the feel that I'm going for with the clock. So I don't want it too tea related, if that makes sense. So I'm getting this clock on first because that's the thing that I'm determined to have on. And then I am just having a fiddle with the other paper embellishments. And I obviously have to be careful. I don't want too much thickness on the clock face because I need to make sure that the hands will still turn. I don't want them to hit the chipboard and then not keep turning around. So I don't want anything thicker than the chipboard already is, because that will be the max thickness. So I'm just keeping it super simple, and I'm going to leave it as how I've organised it there. So I'm again just using the Tombow's glue, trying to put on a fairly decent amount because I really want to make sure this stays on. But I'm running out of glue, so I'll need to add that to my list of supplies to collect again. Now, when I put this down, which was totally fine, it didn't really stick very well. It sort of started to curl from the wet glue. So I will in a minute just get a little weight. So I'm trying to push it down and hold it down. But I realised very quickly, well, I can't sit there with my fingers holding it down and then keep going. So I'm about to get a weight to weigh it down a little bit. And then I keep going with the other letters. Sorry, those are obviously numbers, not letters. As you can hear in the background, my little man was having a wonderful time playing. I think you may have been able to hear, "Mommy, Mommy." So I was quite understandably distracted and stopped recording this voiceover and went to have a play. So this is about the 7th take or the 7th section of recording I'm up to now, because my little man kept interrupting me to play games, which is awesome. Daddy was home, but Mummy's games are just so much better. Anyway, so I'm still using the Tombow's glue to stick on the other sort of, they're not foam thickers, they're the sort of the puffy stickers, I suppose you would call them, and still weighting that down there. It's still curling up just a little bit, but I really want to keep going. I'm getting impatient. I can see how this is going to turn out, and I love it. And so I'm wanting to get it out on the page. So I'm still just checking placement. Obviously, I've got those stuck. My thickers are stuck onto something. It's just some old packaging that's clear so that I can see where to place it. I know in a lot of videos, people use butcher's paper or greaseproof paper or not butcher's paper, baking paper or greaseproof paper. It's really hard to find that specific one in Australia. What we have is baking paper, that's the most common, like the easy, just tons of it on your shelf in the kitchen section of your supermarket. It's not the same as what the American people are talking about. I know we do have what the American people are talking about, but I haven't purchased it because it would be a specific supply that I end up using in my craft room, and I find just clear packaging works just as well. But obviously it's not on a roll, so you don't get the luxury of having, like, I can't cut it to 12 by 12 size or what have you. But I also just use the plastic 12 by 12 bags you can get to do this kind of stuff as well. So, anywho, the thing that I like about using the packaging as well is that it's clear. So it's really quite, like, I can put my things on the page and sort of leave them sit there on that clear packaging and really get a good idea as to where they're going to go, which is cool. So just having a fiddle, the good thing about that word create is that it is a foam thicker, and it does get manipulated just a little bit to suit my needs of where I would like the positioning to be, in that I really want to fit this clock on, and so I need to move the E and the T down a little bit so it gets wiggled down, and you don't look at it and notice that it's it's not straight, or that I've moved it in some way. It still fits like it's the way it's supposed to be, which is really cool. Because I am determined this clock is going on here. I don't think I ever told you the size of the clock that I'm working on, and I don't actually know. I've never measured it, but it's not very big. You can probably guess that when I put the ruler across it, and you can probably guess that by just, my hands on the clock face there. It's probably about 15 centimeters, maybe. I'm not 100% sure. I just made that up. So I realize I'm not going to get that butterfly on. I really wanted it on, and I look again, but I don't want to stick it on top of the numbers because A, I think it'll be really hard to stick, and B, I'm worried that it might catch the hands being up on an angle. It wouldn't be sitting flat because part of it would be up on the number 12 and part of it would be down on the clock face. So it just gets left off. So I'm just adding some more glue behind the flower cluster there down at the underneath the clock, just to make sure it really sticks down, because I can't really weight it because the chipboard, if I put something on top of it, the chipboard just holds it off anyway. But so I'm also using some of the puffy stickers from the Willow Lane collection. They're super gorgeous. I am trying to weight it down there, as you can see with my punch, but I'm noticing that no matter how I try and sit the punch on there, even if I try and sort of lay it on an angle on there, the chipboard's really making it not touch the flower part at all. And I did use glue behind the extra puffy stickers just to make sure they go on well. So you can see I put a love heart puffy sticker up above the clock, a little flower puffy sticker in the teacup, and a little star down next to create. And it's done. That is the clock face, and I'm super happy with it. So now to put it all back together. So there is my actual clock surroundings, in that beautiful teal color, or I don't know if you'd call it teal, aqua maybe. Just making sure that I've got the screw holes lined up, and I'm going to screw that all back together, and it will be ready to gift. It will be a little bit difficult to show you and photograph for you once it's back together, because the glass will form a glare, but I do give it a bit of a try so you can sort of see the whole effect of how it looks with that coloured surrounding, because it sort of picks up my colour choices inside, like why I've used so much of that bluey teal colours inside, when you can see it surrounded by the clock face, and it looks a bit cooler. So yeah, I hope that this is something that you might like to give a go, updating a clock for your craft space, or really you could do any theme. And it could go in any room of your house. You could do a kitchen clock, or you could do a little boy's bedroom clock, or a little girl's bedroom clock. I know they can't quite tell the time yet, but they will be able to. And you could also use, if you're going to do up the clock for a little boy or a little girl's bedroom, you can take advantage of all of the really funky ways that we can teach kids to tell the time by altering that clock, colouring in the 5 minutes in different interval colours, or even colouring it or doing different numbers in different colours for meaning bedtime or for meaning awake time or for lunchtime or whatever. It'd be really cool. So I have attempted to take photos. They were really hard to take, but I hope you like it. Please like and subscribe and stay tuned for our next Advent calendar video.